Okay, so I was thinking about this a little bit, a little bit, and I was thinking about it, and then I'm like, I should probably do a video on this, and that's how Christopher Nolan and Steven Spielberg's careers as a director are pretty similar. When I started to really look at them, Christopher Nolan is probably the archetype of kind of what a director as a director would go through in their path as a director, in a very linear way, which is kind of funny because none of his. I'm not talking about his films. His films are not linear, not in the least. He's probably the most non-linear director, but in the terms of as a director, he does a very linear path, a path that brought him great success. He Christopher Nolan starts out doing very indie films, lowest of the low, basically taking up all his money he has, minimal cast, minimal crew for the following. And I think that what kind of is great about that, what the following does is it allows him to just dabble his feet in the water of directing, where it's not a huge film, it's not a huge cast, not a huge crew, not a huge budget, not at all, but it allows him to prove to himself, because great directors that he can direct, because great directors should be able to being given any concept and any cast, any crew, and just work and make that film possible. And what the following allowed him to do is it's a very small, very personal film, and he just made it. He just decided to make it because at least he had experience. It didn't matter how good the film is. It didn't matter how big the value production value is. He just wanted to make the film as a guide to experience. Then he decides to make a little bit more of a bigger budget, but still very much an indie film with a more bigger, with a more popular cast. In Memento, it's still very much an indie film, but more big names, more. And this is the film, still indie film, but still starting to get his kind of path, his what's it called? His formula, his style with Memento, and so again building up, starting very very much small film, then more indie film, bigger names, and really starting to get his style, but still not at that big franchise level where he's not ready. He keeps getting better. And then when a studio sees him, he's like, oh, you're a good talent, picking up for Insomnia, even bigger names, even a bigger story and a bigger budget. And what it does there is it's not a huge budget. It's not a huge cast and crew. But what it does is it once again proves for a studio he can make a great film, and once again developing his style. Then he's able to, okay, you've done that, now you're able to do a trilogy. But so let's look at the beginning of their careers. So like we said with Christopher Nolan, he starts at a very very indie film. Then he does still an indie film, but a little bit of a bigger budget, bigger names, starting to really get his style. Then he gets picked up by a studio to do kind of a more bigger budget film with even bigger stars and an even bigger story. So how does that compare to Steven Spielberg's beginning of the career? When you look at Jaws, it now is one of the regarded as one of the greatest films of all time. But make no mistake about it. I think it was. What was it? Jaws came out in 1975, and it, as great as it is, as great as the film is, it's still in many ways lower budget considering his career going on. So this was again another great film. That was lower budget, really, for Steven Spielberg to really get his style, really get his tone, without having to do this big high budget blockbuster. It just so happens it was so good that it's now regarded as one of the greatest films of all time. But there's that process of getting there, this idea, once again, like I've been saying, of him what's it called? Getting better. And this was the film that really, was a great practice tool for him. It just so happened it was so well regarded. And so what I think at the beginning of their career, their connections, is that they both don't just start their career in this big, high blockbuster film, and they do a couple of films lower budget. After Jaws, he doesn't. After Jaws, even then he doesn't do this big block. Like, yes, Jaws spawned off to be this big blockbuster franchise, but when he made Jaws, it was just a little, indie film. And when you look at Jaws, yes, it's considered the start of modern day blockbusters, but when you go back in the day, it's still relatively a smaller scale. It didn't have the weight of the world or anything like that, or expected to make billions of dollars. It was just, a great outlet to really get Steven Spielberg to get, try as a director. It just so happened it was so good. It spawned him a great, great career. But then, even then, after that, it's not like he then just decides, oh, I'm going to do a franchise. No, even then, he's like, okay, I'm going to do, he did, and even before that, he did Duel. Before Jaws, he did Duel. And it's very similar to how Nolan did The Following. It was just him and his friends who decided to make Duel. Not huge budget, not huge cast. It was just simply him and his friends. So even dating back before Jaws, he got his, friends. He got his, mini cast. So similar to Nolan, they start their careers as their very first film as just a little, film, taking whatever money they have and make a film. Then they do a little bit of a bigger film. What does he do? He does, like we said, he does, this film, Sugarland Express, according to this thing. And once again, smaller film, but then he builds up to maybe like a studio film in Jaws, but still lower budget. So then he can get into Indiana Jones. But this is where their connection is really fascinating. Christopher Nolan and Steven Spielberg both did trilogies. Spielberg, Indiana Jones, and Nolan, Batman, the Dark Knight trilogy. So Nolan did Dark Knight trilogy. Steven Spielberg did Indiana Jones. But this is really where the connections fascinate me. Is they're both two of the most, just diverse directors who can do so many different films. And what I love about both of them, in this sense, is it's not like they did one film, then the next film, and the next film in the trilogy. They did one blockbuster film, one franchise film, one non-franchise, one franchise, one non-franchise, one franchise. Because when you look at Nolan, he did Batman Begins, then The Prestige, then The Dark Knight, then after The Dark Knight, Inception, then after The Dark Knight, after Inception, The Dark Knight Rises. So he kind of did, one franchise, one non-franchise, one franchise, and one not franchise. Same exact thing with Spielberg. He did Indiana Jones, then he did E.T., then he did Temple of Doom, then he did, what was next? The Color Purple. Then he did, after that, he did Empire of the Sun. And so, what that allows you to do, when you switch out of franchise, non-franchise, is what that allows you to do is really maintain diversity as a director. Because I've always said, Steven Spielberg, what makes him, in my opinion, the greatest filmmaker of all time, is Steven Spielberg makes such diverse films, but they don't feel like each other. And how's he able to make diverse films? It's because he never makes too many of the same types of films. Where he's not, Steven Spielberg is not the best at any one genre. Steven Spielberg is not the best at action. He's not the best at horror. He's not the best at sci-fi. He's not the best at biopics. You know why? Because he doesn't do that many of them. He does a little bit in these different varying varying genres, and and that makes it so much more interesting as a director. And so what he does is he does franchise, non-franchise, non-franchise. Because what happens if you just do franchise straight? What what he what he does. There are some great connections between the franchise, and it really, by having non-franchise films, it really gets you to flex your creative muscles and go out in and out. But anyways, stay tuned for more videos coming at you.